I'd like to call to order the September 18th, 2023 regular board meeting of the State College Area School District Board of Directors. If everyone could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone joining us in person this evening and those viewing remotely. The board held an executive session prior to this meeting regarding personnel and legal matters, including case number 0322143. Board members with the agenda before you, do you have any changes? Okay, seeing none, I would like to have a roll call from our substitute board secretary of board members.
Dr. Anderson.
Here.
Dr. Bader.
Here.
Dr. Buck.
Here.
Dr. Krevakor.
Yeah.
Dr. Duffy.
Here.
Mr. Leos.
Yes.
Ms. Zidney.
Yes.
Thank you. And now we will move on to superintendent update.
Thank you, Dr. Bader. As a reminder, the State College Area School District Board of Directors will hold the first of this school's year's 4 board conversations with the community on October 12th from 8 to 10 a.m. at the Good Day Cafe. The event is an open opportunity for anyone in the community to connect with board members on any district-related topic. Details about the other 3 scheduled conversations are on the district website. We hope to see you on October 12th.
Good Day's a wonderful place to meet too. So next up we have student representative update. So Chayla.
Hello. The football game on Friday, we won against Altoona, which was really awesome. I do not have a list in front of me today, so this is improvised, but I think for a lot of students, the work is starting to get a little more rigorous as the school year moves on. I think we're on week 4 now. And so clubs are getting more active, students are getting really excited. We had a club fair last week that I did attend. It was very cool. And yeah, so the school year is starting to pick up.
All right.
It's getting real good.
Thank you. Up next, we typically have a legislative update, but we don't have Ms. Huff here tonight, so I think we'll pass on that. I don't know of anything pressing at the moment, unless another board member does. Okay. And moving on from there, we have an update from, I'm sorry, did you have one? No. Oh, okay. Because you were making sure I could see her. Thank you. So we have potential updates from the COG, the Center Region Council of Governments liaison. Peter?
I do not have any updates.
Okay. Well, then we'll move on. At this time, we have time for public comment. Each individual will be allotted up to 3 minutes. For action items, public comment will be held just prior to voting on that item as required by the Sunshine Act. If additional time is necessary, the board may consider reopening public comment after board business is completed or during the next meeting. As a reminder, public comment is a chance for community members to share their thoughts with the board. It is not a time for the board to answer questions or engage in conversations. You can always welcome to email the board at all-board@scasd.org. Is there anyone here in person who would like to make a public comment? Yes, you want to come to the podium? If you could give us your name and where you reside in the district for the record, we'd appreciate it. And you have 3 minutes.
So, just about
It should be on.
Okay. My name is Noah Demo. I am a State High senior and, and resident of College Township. Tomorrow is National Voter Registration Day, and I'm here tonight to thank SCASD students and administrators for their support of my efforts to organize nonpartisan voter education and registration at State High and call on the SCASD School Board to pass a resolution formally supporting such nonpartisan voter engagement efforts. In July, I attended a civic engagement camp at Gettysburg College organized by the Eisenhower Institute for Public Policy. Since I returned, I have worked on establishing nonpartisan voter registration efforts at State High. My interest in youth voting at State High began last fall after writing an article for Lions Digest about first-time voters in the 2022 midterm elections. The students I interviewed both said that they wanted State High to do more. Abigail Mazer, for example, stated, "I think it would be great if the school could do more to encourage people to register because it's part of your civic duties." Current students agree. Members of the Key Club, National Honor Society and student government have already signed up to volunteer for a nonpartisan voter registration drive. As a member of the Student Advisory Council for the nonpartisan Gilder Lehrman Institute of American History, I've also been working to bring a free traveling exhibit on the history of voting to State College. I have the support of Schlow Library and hope SCASD students can have the opportunity to learn more about the history and process of voting. According to Making Young Voters, Converting Civic Attitudes into Civic Action, young people feel overwhelmed by the voting process, so bringing voter education to schools is critical. When 18-year-olds don't vote, they are don't register for their first election, they are less likely to make voting a habit. In closing, a key goal of the State College School District strategic plan is that SCASD graduates are engaged civically in our local, national, and global communities. Pennsylvania's academic standards for civics and government state that schools were created to educate children to be useful citizens loyal to the principles upon which our republic was founded, and aware of their duties as citizens to maintain those ideals. The intent of the code is that such instruction shall have for its purpose also instilling their solemn duty and obligation to exercise intelligently their voting privilege and to understand the advantages of the American Republican representative form of government. In addition, Pennsylvania Statute Title 25, Stipulation 1327 requires voter registration materials be made available to every public school. Please consider the sample resolutions in support of the sample resolutions in support of nonpartisan voter engagement from other PA school districts. I will send each of you tonight, and then help students live up to the SCASD goal for us to be engaged local citizens.
Thank you, Noah. That was a really great presentation. And I appreciate you sending us some drafts. That will be really helpful.
You're very welcome.
Great. So do we have anyone else here in person that would like to make a public comment? Yes, if you want to come up to the podium and give us your name and where you reside in the district, and you'll have 3 minutes for your comments.
Can you hear me? Hi, my name is Carrie Wiesman. I also live in College Township and former employee here at the school district for close to 20 years. So recently I've become aware of a pending policy approval being discussed for vote this evening that is both misunderstood and concerning to many people. My understanding is that teachers are being asked not to include questions that are in Synergy when they give students a survey, including their pronouns. Graciously, both Tanya Black and Jean Knaus have answered a number of my questions, and I understand that with change always comes some resistance, and education is needed about the change. Nonetheless, I do continue to have some concerns that I'd like to share with you, and I will give you a copy of this.
Great, thank you.
So number one is, even though Synergy is actually a dynamite program in recording student data, it is only as accurate as the people who do and do not put data into the system. That means that when teachers go to Synergy, they know what is in Synergy, but that does not mean that they know that Synergy is correct. In fact, Synergy can never be 100% correct for many reasons. Now, this past week, a student has been trans in our school district for 4 years, was misgendered in front of his whole class because what was recorded in Synergy is not correct. Despite the parent going into the system to correct what was in Synergy the week before. We can ask if the administration had been responsibly and delightfully working with this trans male student for the last 4 years, which the parent indicates they have been. They've been having a very successful experience with State College School District, and I've often heard that. So why was the gender in Synergy listed as female? Plus, if the parent did the work of correcting this in Synergy, why was it not correct in the system a week later? The answer is pretty simple. It was an oversight for the past 3 years, and this year the secretary did not know she was the one who was responsible to accept the changes made in the system. While this will, I hope, with time, be a simple thing to fix, in this child's case, it felt like a really big mistake, and it was really harmful to this child. Fortunately, this child is already engaged in the community with support services and so on. But a big mistake like this can be very detrimental to a trans student who is simply struggling to exist. So number 2 is that on the heels of some teachers getting in trouble last year for the way they asked students about their pronouns, teachers were told they could not ask for pronouns in a survey without any real explanation or education around this issue. Last year, the board approved an LGBT plus affirming statement. Last year, teachers got into trouble for doing what they thought had just been approved by the school district.
I'm sorry, Ms. Wiesman, that's your 3 minutes, and we try hard to be respectful to every member and keeping it to 3
Okay.
minutes, but we'd be very happy to receive your additional comments by email. for
Okay.
Sure.
So I just would like to say, we just need to be really careful that when we look at a policy, it doesn't do more harm than good, especially if you're trying to meet the needs of all the really hard-to-serve kids. And I am concerned that that hasn't been thought out well. And I wonder if we shouldn't be, rather than jumping into doing it that way, ironing out some of the details before, and taking the time to educate our people and so on before jumping into this policy.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Do we have anyone else in person who would like to make a public comment? Oh, okay. Great, if you could just state your name and where you reside in the district, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Ferman Almeida. I live in the College Township, and going to talk further about our concerns about this survey. It's also a matter of, do the students' parents know about gender identification? Rolling out this policy implies that the district has thoroughly trained staff in how to assess the information of gender and pronouns for the students in their classes, and that the secretary knows that in person who must accept the changes by parents as quickly as possible. We also understand that the pronouns listed in Synergy are also not adequate. The options for gender are good, but in Synergy, additional pronouns need to be listed. If you have to check a box, and it would be helpful if you could check more than one. It would be better if the pronouns could be just written in, as other questions in Synergy also allow to do so. If this is not possible, then the following pronouns at the minimum should be added as choices, and that's he, they, she, they, ze, zer. And while we know that the board is considering a policy to comply with the guidelines, we also see that it could be a burden with students with repeating questions on these said surveys. We would ask that you consider whether in this case of gender and pronouns, this may harm that exact student it intends to serve. Furthermore, it's not that clear, like we've mentioned before, what teachers are allowed or not allowed to put in surveys. That could lead to a bit of disconnect from the students and their teachers. It could disconnect students from trusting their teachers. Could also put students at risk of outing themselves to friends and families when they're not ready to come out. So this, we seen that it could put our youth at risk of suicide, or thoughts of suicide. It could lead to bullying, mostly led by homophobia, but that's a different conversation. We just want to make sure that these policies prevent our youth from risk, from having conversations, from having those resources. So we would just ask that we consider those things a bit more. It's not simple. It's quite complicated, as this has been a topic for, I believe, quite a bit of time now. So those are our concerns, and we just hope that you take that into consideration coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have any additional people in person that would like to make a comment? All right. Anyone online attending that would like to make a comment this evening? Yes, Kat Cook, I see your hand raised, and you've been unmuted, so whenever you're ready, if you can give your name and where you reside, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Kat Cook, and I live in Patton Township, and I have 2 children in the district. I am also a very proud parent of a transgender student, and I am speaking this evening about a concern that I have. I recently found out through information obtained on ParentView, which is, to my understanding, a snapshot of what the teachers or admins get to see when they pull up information about students in Synergy. I recently saw that my child was both misgendered and their pronouns were not listed. Upon seeing this, I immediately went to the form to make the changes, and upon submission, a message comes up that says this change requires approval. Okay, so I give it some time. Over a week passes, and I check again to find that the information has still not been updated. In fact, they are still not updated as of this meeting time. Within this week, my child was misgendered in front of their whole class. I want to share that my child has identified as the same gender and pronouns for years, and with this new system change, he has been misgendered. This was both painful and embarrassing for my child. Thankfully, the teacher, who happened to be a substitute teacher, could see something was wrong with my child during class and pulled them aside. My child is also unafraid to advocate for themselves, which led to an apology by the teacher. However, this was not the teacher's fault, as they were going off what they saw in Synergy. I am here specifically speaking about my own child. However, I cannot help but think how many students this has happened to that were afraid to speak up. The information in this system must be correct and accurate. And I have learned that not only was my child's information incorrect, but that it is not a simple task to fix it. This needs to be changed. When I brought this to the attention of the school and asked who is responsible for approving the changes that I put into the system, I was told that registration approves this. Well, I gave registration some time, and I had not heard back from registration, so I again emailed the school, and at this time I was told that Student Services is handling this. The reply that I received from them was that it was not a simple fix and that Synergy dictates the information on the form. I then heard from the DEIB office, who informed me that this was an IT issue and that they needed to be made aware of this and followed up with. At this point, I have been bounced around to 5 different people who all could not provide me with a clear answer. I will say it again that my child's information remains incorrect. I would also like to add to the options provided on the form that are not complete. The pronouns provided are only she, her, he, him, and they, them. This leaves out all other pronouns. When I asked why this field could not be a type-in field, I was told that it could not be opened up for a type-in box and that schools are not allowed to revise these at all. There are type-in boxes for nicknames and more, so I am confused why this category is an issue. Some students utilize more than one pronoun. For example, my child uses they, he. There is not an option to choose more than one, and again, many are missing.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. That's your 3 minutes. If you have some additional comments you'd like to share with us, I'd be happy to hear from you through email, if that's okay.
Yeah, I will send this to the entire board because I definitely have some more to cover.
We'd be happy to receive that. Thank you for your comments. Do we have anyone else online that was interested in making a public comment this evening? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to routine approvals. Is there a motion to approve the routine approval listing as presented on the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion on these matters? Yes, Ms. Sidney.
I had 2 comments. Thank you. 2 things. With regard to the physical plant updates, routine approvals, I just wanted to say that I noticed that we're spending a small amount for preventive maintenance and a larger amount for emergency maintenance. So it's good to see we're doing the preventive maintenance, and I assume there's a connection there. And I'm hoping that that means the longer term thing, the larger things won't happen in the future. It was really very helpful to see the detail in this memo. And the question, so that's a comment and a thank you for the detail. The questions I have are with the technology routine approvals. One of them is Discovery Ed. It's an amount not to exceed 11,600, and I wasn't sure what that is for and if it's a renewal or a new thing. Because I wasn't able, the last time I saw it, found it, was a few years ago.
Hi. Discovery Ed is a video streaming service, and we are increasingly aware of the copyright and restrictions on things that we can stream. We can't just, no longer can teachers just hook up to Netflix to show a clip of something. So we are purchasing that as a video streaming service. They have some additional educational videos in addition to another service that we use already.
Thank you for the explanation, because I had seen it, it was a number of years ago, but it was about half the cost, but it was also probably less stuff.
It was lot less stuff.
And-
So they have activities and resources and all, like, things that are reproducible, like, for that video, like, on demand. So it's not just the video, it's also the resources that come with it.
Resources, and they're an important part of the curriculum, but it would be helpful to have some of that, and to, maybe there needs to be a discussion on what's a routine versus a new thing, and
I think Justin also had his hand up. I don't know if you
Okay.
wanted to add anything to what Chris had
Yeah.
said. Justin?
in the sky.
Yes, thank you. It's a renewal. So this went last year, I believe, as an addition because we expanded it from our. I believe we only use it at elementary, so we took it last year for a district license, and this year is just a renewal.
Thank you. And can you fill in what Lexia is as well, the Lexia Learning?
I think Jonathan Klingman's going to join us and fill us in on that one.
Thank you.
Lexia Learning is the master company that provides the professional development licenses for letters, language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling. So we're in the process of working to collaborate with the intermediate unit on providing additional training on the science of reading and systematic and explicitness in literacy to elementary teachers. So that's what that license is for.
That when we go in, we see them up on the wall that show all the different
Parts of it, yeah.
publications and that type of thing?
Parts of it, yes.
Thank
It's a pretty popular training, so we're excited that we have several facilitators that can offer it locally.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, letters training is pretty widely embraced. Any other questions on routine approvals from the board? Okay. Any public comment on this item? Okay. Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Ms. Zidney,
Yes.
Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Bader,
Yes.
Dr. Buck,
Yes.
Dr. Krevakor,
Yes.
Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Leos.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. The motion carries. Just want to say welcome to Rebecca Michaels, who will be joining us in our virtual academy as an assistant principal. So welcome to the district. Okay, so now we'll move on to action items. Agenda item 6A. Wait, I need to double check because I know that there were a couple tweaks to the agenda, so I'm not sure if my list has been updated. So forgive me, I'm going to double check. Okay, so action item 6A is a motion to approve advanced placement testing funding. This is shown in attachment 6A. Do I have a motion on the table?
So moved. Second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Do we have any questions or discussion on this item? We did discuss this at our previous meeting last week about the justifications and reasons for bringing this forward from the administration. Ms. Zidney?
Thanks. We did talk about it last week, and I appreciate the additional detail in the memo this week. I'm still left wondering how this will be so helpful, and I went back and looked at the update we got from CECR on our AP numbers. And when I did, what I saw is that only 64% on average of students in AP classes take the test, which to me, we already have a lot of students taking tests who are taking the class who are not going to take the test. That's already happening. So I'm wondering why we think that by now paying for, I think we'll get more test takers with this, but is the goal to have more test takers or more students enrolled? So I guess that's a sort of fundamental, what's the purpose behind the suggestion?
Well, I think it's both. I mean, we want more we want more test takers, and we want more students in AP courses taking the test, if possible.
Dan?
Yeah, is it also fair to say that we want fewer hindrances or hurdles the kids have to cross that might interfere with their ability and interest either to enroll or to take the test? Because the whole idea is to engage kids who would otherwise not be participating in these things for social reasons, academic reasons, financial reasons, or whatever.
Yeah,
I think that's the
removing
whole
barriers
idea.
of
It's to
entry.
remove barriers, essentially.
Any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry, were you not
Yeah,
finished, Laura?
I'm not. I'm
Okay.
done.
Do you have another
Because
question?
I listened, especially when you were talking last week as our student representative, and your point of view is very important, and the perspective that students have. So I wanted to be very clear about what my concerns about this are, and that it's not that I want more barriers to entry or anything like that. There were a couple of things mentioned in the CECR report in terms of barriers for students who already are eligible for free and reduced lunch, that they have, they can only take 4 tests a year, and that they can only do it if they've registered by November. And I hope we'll address those, because those, it seems to me, for students who we know have need, are real barriers that have already been identified. It seems to me, given the demographics of our class, of our AP testers, that the vast majority of this money is going to go to the people who already spent over 110,000, I think, last year on tests. And what we'll see next year,
I'm sorry, which people spending which money? I'm just not following
the
you.
memo said that SCASD parents spent this much on AP tests.
Oh, that was an estimate, okay.
You know, approximately. You know, it was down to the penny. My guess is that number will be much lower next year. What I'm hoping will come forward in a report when this is looked at again is how many are actually more taking the classes, and whether some of the bar has begun to shift on the percentages of students engaged in these classes. Because right now, when I look through it, actually the percentage of kids who take the tests, who are enrolled and take the tests, is fairly similar across the entire student population. So once the kid gets into class, they're more or less is likely to take the test. The barriers seem to be getting the kids into class, and it would be great if this helped with that.
Peter, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I think that the intent behind this is wonderful. We want as many students as possible, and particularly students who face structural barriers to being included, to being able to see themselves as someone who can take AP, can succeed at AP. Removing a barrier is hugely important, and that, assessing any policy or investment is a good idea. That's what we should be doing regardless. And, my hunch is that, this policy, while it may not have some like ground, earth-shaking impact on every kid, will provide incremental good for a handful of kids where it will make a difference for them. That's my hunch. That those kinds of things are borne out in lots of other situations from policies like this. So I look forward to voting for it.
Jim, did you?
Deb
Oh,
had
I'm
her
sorry.
hand up before
Fine.
me.
It's a little hard to.
I just wanted to reply briefly to Laurel's concern. We'd have to look at the data. I am doubtful, but we'd have to look at the data, that the limit of 4 AP exams per year, not total, but per year, I doubt that that's a binding constraint on many students, because honestly, taking more than 4 AP classes and 4 AP exams in any given school year is quite a load. And I might be concerned that the student is overextending themselves. That said, we have to look at the data. I wouldn't want that to be a barrier if we do have students who are on free or reduced price lunch. But looking at the numbers that we have, I'm doubting that anyone actually even took 4. So I don't think that's a big concern. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thanks, that's a
Because
good
it's 4 per year,
it's a
not
good-
4 total.
Well,
That's a good clarification.
And just to be clear, the only reason I brought that up is because it's specifically cited in the report. The bigger thing to me is actually the November 1st thing. And that's the thing where I think we've got this proposal to pay for the test, the first test that a student takes in their high school career. It seems to me that a lot of students who might come in not planning to take the test, but willing to take an AP class, they don't sign up for the test. It gets to be January, they're actually doing well, but the fact then that they would have to actually pay more to take the test could well be a reason they say, nah, I'm not even going to try now. I've discussed this with another colleague who thinks, no, we've got to give them incentive to declare right up front, I'm going to take that test. I would like at least to say that for students who haven't registered, the district will be looking to help out if they decide later in their school year that they are ready to take the test, that they feel capable of taking the test, that we can help with that late registration fee. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is the issue of IB tests, that if we are going to do this, I hope we'll see a proposal coming forward to pay for one IB test as well.
Dr. Anderson, did you have something additional you wanted to add?
I was going to address the November 1 deadline as well. I mean, that is the deadline from the College Board. And if you register after that, then the fees go up. I would encourage anyone who has any interest potentially to register early. And if you qualify for the reduced fees, there's really no there's no incentive not to register early. You register, and then if you decide that it's not worth taking it, if you haven't paid for it, then it doesn't matter, right? If you did pay for it, take the test and see how you do. You never know until you take the test. But especially if it's a reduced, it's cheaper for us to pay the reduced fee before November 1 than it would be to pay for the higher fee later. So I think we just need to encourage our students to hit that deadline. The deadline is hard, and it's hard for all of our families, but we need to just deal with the deadline. I don't think paying the higher fees makes any sense, personally.
And as a high school parent who has had some children in AP, I know that the teachers in particular and the counseling staff send email after email after email to both students and teachers trying to remind them of that deadline to make sure that they can get in on time. Jim, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I didn't want to say anything about this last week because I wasn't exactly sure about the details, but the Richard Queenie Fund will actually help fund AP exam test fees. So that's a Richard Queenie Memorial Educational Opportunity Fund that's provided to the school district. So just, if there are people that maybe don't meet that threshold of the free and reduced lunch, but could use the financial help, they could go make an application to that fund.
If they're taking if they're taking additional tests and,
Yeah,
and things. you
yeah,
mean.
exactly.
Okay, yeah,
Exactly.
that's a good reminder. Yes. Okay. I guess the one comment I would make is that when we're working on something that has an equity effort, we talk about removing barriers, and we have experience knowing that programs that remove barriers for all students result in changes in equity. So an example I would use is universal free lunch. When we had that during the pandemic, we knew that any students on the cusp or who had sudden changes in their financial status, like from lost job, a sick family member in the hospital, then medical bills, those situations often aren't addressed through these programs like free and reduced lunch because they are annual programs. So when we create systems that remove barriers for all students, we know that we're going to catch those students in need that may or may not be qualify or may not be eligible at certain times for free and reduced lunch. So it's just an example similar to this, although the cost for universal free lunches are certainly significantly higher than this amount that we're putting forth to use for this program. And as has been discussed, I think certainly we will ask to be evaluating it and the efficiency in decision making about whether to continue it moving forward should it be approved this evening. So that's my statement to share.
I just, very quickly, I ask with many things, what else have we considered? It's not that I think it's a harmful program, it's that anytime we're doing something, including universal free lunch, because I think your point is well taken, that when everybody is helped, We know that it disproportionately helps kids who have more barriers and have more challenges, including registering by November. But the question is whether these are funds that, if they were more targeted, could be even more helpful and remove even more barriers. Like for a student who felt they couldn't afford tutoring if they needed or something, and that's what they need. That's my question about this, is it doing the most good for the most needy? As opposed to will it hurt?
Go ahead, Carlene, and no, go ahead. No, she was talking. I was just going to say that, I think the challenge is there are barriers for socioeconomically challenged families to come forward and ask for those things. Either they're unaware that they will receive assistance, there are sadly social stigma to those who have economic needs. And so I'm grateful for the Queenie Fund and all those other things, but I think we have to consider those factors when we try to make decisions about improving equity situations, because there are significant barriers to those families coming forward in certain situations.
Yeah, basically, I was going to say, I agree with just about everything you said, Amy. And one thing I would also like to tell Laurel is that it's a start.
You just might need to be closer.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay, so basically, it's a start. And it doesn't mean it's going to solve the problems overnight, but I think it's a step in the right direction. And for me, I think that is a good thing that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Okay. I think that, Jayla, did you want to add anything? I saw some animated faces. I'm more than happy to hear from you again on the subject.
That's just my natural way. I'm so sorry. If you say something that I agree with, you will know that I agree with you. You will know. Just the idea that we're making access a goal for our district. It's something that's really important to me, and I know that it's not really expressed enough sometimes by other students just because of, the fear of being like, yeah, we need more. But just keeping that in mind, there's a lot of students that are really embarrassed about their economic status in their life, and I don't really think they want to tell their mom, like, hey, can you email this person because we can't afford this? Or even if they do, just thinking about the immediate reaction of, oh, no, actually, you have access to this. This is already being implemented for you because people are thinking about you. It's just something that's important, not just for this. This is something that's important, but it's like a small, tiny mountain, and there are so many other big mountains that are really hard to climb that we're trying to figure out here. And just knowing that even the small little things that seem so like unnecessary or not as important are being handled with as much care and as much attentive urgency. That's what I was thinking about. But yeah, thank you so much for keeping this in mind and also recognizing my little rant last time, but thank you.
It was a very well stated position.
Yeah. Thanks, Jayla. Okay, so if we've concluded discussion on this item, we'll open it up for any public comment. So if you could state your name and where you reside in the district, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Mary Morningstar, and I reside in College Township. I kind of wonder whether or not there is a better use for the money to close the equity gap. I think investing into our advanced classes again would be a better option. I know in 11th grade, advanced classes were taken out. By taking away that rung of the ladder, you make it impossible to climb the ladder. So you're only given 2 options, college prep or AP exams. That's a problem for kids that are in the middle. That's a problem for kids who want to participate in things. Parents are asked to pay for the AP exams very early on, before they even know if their students are going to stay in the class, even before the students know how they're doing in the class alone, let alone how prepared they feel for the AP exam. They don't even know, you may not even score high enough to get credit for the class at the university level. And sometimes the universities may accept your credits, but they will still advise you to take their version to make sure that you are well prepared going into their course load. I have kids that have done both AP and advanced classes and, participated in AP exams. I have to say, the accelerated classes were a better option. It gave the kids, the rigor that they needed to transition into college without the stress of an AP class. Kids are still kids in high school, and I feel like, especially at this district, we are pushing kids to be adults way before they need to be. Advanced classes, I feel like after speaking to my two kids that just graduated last year and the year before, so this is very, in my mind, they said that their advanced classes were the best thing for them. The kids have the availability to participate in athletics, clubs, activities, and most importantly, they have a well-rounded transcript. And probably the most important thing that you get out of this is that the GPA for an AP and an advanced class is the same. You are making the assumption that these kids are going to score well on the AP exam. You make the assumption that they're going to score well in the class. In an advanced class, if they score an A, their GPA comes up. If they, or it could go down. There's still that argument. But the point is, if you have a high GPA going into college, and I know this because my daughter just applied to 5 different colleges, at the state level, at the private level, if you have a high GPA, you will receive thousands of dollars in scholarship-based money based on your GPA.
Thank you for your comments. That's 3 minutes.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Additional public comment in person? You could state your name and where you
I'm Michelle
reside.
Young, and I reside in Ferguson Township. I have 3 children in the district. Mary Morningstar, she was put a little bit on the spot here, and I think that one of her biggest points was where the time cut off. And I think that it was a point that she had discussed with me that I don't think was brought up or discussed by any board members or anybody else who spoke about this. And it's in regards to how the relationship between the advanced classes and the AP classes. So with being the same GPA, it's both being weighted, however they're weighted, her students, there are students out there who take the advanced classes because they don't want the pressure of taking an AP class. I have a freshman right now, and he's in advanced classes. And it could be that come his junior year or senior year, he would be taking advanced or AP English course, an AP Science course, an AP Math course, and an AP Social Studies course in order to remain at the advanced level that he currently is as a freshman. And at the same time, he's an elite wrestler. And so he would have to spend time as an elite wrestler and try to make that work-life, that balance. And my fear for him in the future is that he will not be able to balance that. If he decides to be an engineer, for example, then maybe he would just take the AP Math and the AP Science and maybe just take the advanced English and the advanced Social Studies. And that would give him a nice, well-rounded GPA and a well-rounded school life balance. And I think that by forcing students to choose either the AP course and all of the corresponding required level of homework and work, not required by the teacher, but required by the actual AP class itself, I think that we're putting pressure on students to continue to try and take those advanced courses. And the point that Mary was going to make, but her time was cut off, is that these students, and her children just went through this college application process and the financial process and the scholarship process. And much of the scholarships that when they were looking at scholarships for her children, and I might slaughter this, Mary, because I'm trying to say your words, that the scholarship money depends on the GPA. So if you have a student like mine that didn't want to take 4 AP classes, then they would take 2 AP classes and 2 college prep classes and lose out on the weighted grade of an advanced class. And then that GPA not being weighted as his peers would be applying for a financial aid or applying for scholarships, then they could potentially miss out on thousands of dollars in regards to scholarship money because their school didn't offer an advanced class and he didn't want to take 4 AP courses. So I think that the lack of the advanced classes is an issue, and I think that if our purpose is to provide equity, that by providing more academic classes, we can give much of our marginalized populations another option.
Thank you. Do you have anyone else in person that would like to make a public comment on this action item? Anyone online joining us? You can just raise your hand if you'd like to make a comment. Okay. Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Bader,
Yes.
Dr. Buck,
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore,
Yes.
Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Leos,
Yes.
Ms. Zidney.
Yes.
Okay, that item is passed. Moving on, we'll move on to agenda item 6B, which is to approve the election of PSBA officers as shown in attachment 6B. Now, just to note, I think the attachment links to the website, and so these are PSBA, our state association leadership positions, and currently they're all uncontested roles. So essentially, unless a certain member of the board feels strongly that they want to vote no against one of those, I'd appreciate taking a motion to approve the entire slate as presented on the PSBA website, if that seems appropriate for everyone. So I will open it up and ask for a motion.
I will so move what you just said, if I don't need to repeat it.
So we'll move that the board approves the slate of candidates for PSBA leadership positions as presented on their website.
Thanks.
Thank you. Just trying to keep it simple. Are there any questions or discussions on that item? Okay. Any public comment? In person or online? All right, seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Bader,
Yes.
Dr. Buck,
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore,
Yes.
Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Leos,
Yes.
Ms. Zidney,
Yes.
Dr. Anderson.
Yes.
All right, that item is passed. Moving on to agenda item 6C is a motion to approve policy 117, homebound instruction. This is shown in attachment 6C.
So moved.
Second.
So that's been moved and second. Are there any questions or discussion? And we also have Jean Knaus online, as well as Linda here at the table to answer any questions regarding this item. We're going to do several policies that have gone through policy committee in this next several agenda items. No questions or
Well,
discussion?
thanks for the addition of parent guardian. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay, so this is some boilerplate stuff. So if we don't have any questions or discussion, do we have any public comment on this item? All right, seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Buck,
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore,
Yes.
Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Leos,
Yes.
Ms. Zidney,
Yes.
Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Bader.
Yes. That item is passed. Moving on to agenda item 6D is a motion to approve policy 200, enrollment in the district. This is shown in attachment 6D.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussions on this item? Okay, this is another policy that went through committee and we reviewed. Any public comment on this item? All right, seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Crevecore,
Yes.
Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Leos,
Yes.
Ms. Zidney,
Yes.
Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Bader,
Yes.
Dr. Buck.
Yes.
Okay, that item is passed. The next item, agenda 6E, is a motion to approve policy 235.1, surveys. This is shown in attachment 6E.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion from board members? Yeah, Dr. Anderson.
Sorry, this is the survey policy, right?
Correct.
Sorry, I got a text from my kid. I just wanted to, I guess, reiterate the questions that came up during public comment. I don't think it's something that needs to stop the policy from happening, in my opinion. But I want to make sure that we have processes in place to make sure that we, and I saw you taking notes, Curtis, so I know you're already on it, but I guess I want to assure the public that that is our intent. And so the things in particular that I guess I wanted to just repeat and amplify that I heard specifically, how do we make sure that Synergy is correct? So if a I think we need to encourage our families to go in and check to make sure their information is correct and how they want it. It looks like it's relatively straightforward, because I literally went in during public comment into my own parent view to make sure I could do it. It looks like it's relatively straightforward to submit a change, but we need to make sure that someone on the other end is accepting and approving those changes. So we clearly need to make sure that that happens if we're not going to allow teachers to ask those types of questions, right? We need that data to be correct.
And just to clarify, like, they're not asking these questions on a survey.
Correct.
Correct.
Right? And then, is it possible, and this might be an IT question, and again, I don't think we have to necessarily fix it tonight, but it seems reasonable that we could expand the list of pronouns to choose from and/or allow it to be an open-ended question. So I understand that sometimes there's limitations within software, but at the very least, I would hope that we could expand the list of pronouns so that we could have more options. Is that possible? We can
So
find
that's
out.
that's something I have to look, because Synergy allows certain things, and this is a fairly new thing
Right.
that Synergy is offering. Right now, I think it only offers the generic pronouns. As I'm sure we can put in a request to try to get more pronouns put into the kiosk, but that would be a request, and that takes time for them, because obviously they're not going to just listen to us.
Clearly.
But there would be multiple school districts asking for the same
Yeah.
thing, and then they would make those kind of requests.
And as a workaround in the short term, since the nickname field is an open-ended question,
Saying what I was going to say.
right, maybe that could be a place where you can put in a nickname, and then like if it allows enough characters, that you could put in your open-ended preferred pronoun there. And then it would just require professional development to make sure that people check that field as well. But if we have an open-ended field, maybe that's a workaround in the short term to allow more information to be shared.
That's a suggestion I was going to make as well. Yeah.
Or
Thanks.
if the family uses one of those limited options, we can call the family and clarify with the family by phone. Could come from the principal, let's say, to clarify.
They're not
the
they're not available for the parents to check off, Dan, is what the problem is.
Okay.
Yeah, so that it's only she, her, he, him, they, them.
Right.
And some people use a combination of those,
But-
and those aren't available on the checklist.
But if somebody has filled it out, my point is, if they filled it out, we can call and confirm the choice that they made was the one they wanted, or if there are others that they would want to expand into, we could consult with them about that.
I think it might be challenging, like I put in my child's pronouns. If every parent puts in pronouns for their child, makes that choice, then that's a lot of people.
If they're, yeah, well, I'm just thinking.
I don't know that the system has an ability to flag that they're
If
how
people
they would know
chose
they were
something
different.
besides the conventional, that might be a way, a marker to indicate the need for that. I'm just thinking about something practical.
Right now, currently, I'm in the process of working with my assistant superintendent to check with Justin about the process, to make sure that whoever's given approval is checking it periodically to make sure that that occurs. Last I checked, that's for any demographic information that's changed in Synergy, it's up to the building secretary to make those changes. So we're going to make sure that that is occurring. For the person that brought that information up, we have made that change, is what I've gotten. Okay.
Great, that's helpful. Yes, Ms. Zinni?
I'm glad to see the policy here. I appreciate the concerns that were raised tonight, as well as the ones that were raised before that helped speed this policy along. My sincere hope is that enough has been done that with this policy in place and we move forward, parents who are concerned about the surveys will feel comfortable enough that they're being respected, that they can feel more comfortable with the school in general. And that over time, we may be able to address what the source of that discomfort is. Because I'm very concerned, as someone who's always thought that surveys, though not perfect, are a way to help us understand what's going on in our schools, help children who need help. When we have a lot of people who do not feel safe or comfortable filling out a survey or having their child do so, I think it undermines our ability to serve all children. And if this can be a start that then over time will help us actually get more people back into taking surveys, I hope that's what's going to happen, because I think it's unfortunate that that a relatively larger group of people, and still a very small percentage, but seems to be growing, just are not willing to participate in that type of communal information gathering.
Okay, thanks. Other board members? Any additional comments or questions? Okay, we'll open it up to public comment. Is there anybody would like to make a public comment on this item? You can join us at the podium. I think you know the drill.
Hello, my name is Mary Morningstar. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for working so hard on this policy. I really do feel that everyone's needs have been met. If you want to participate in surveys, you can do it. If you don't want to participate in surveys, you don't have to, which I think is great. The one thing I would ask moving forward is that we get, as parents, an email specific to the process of how to opt out, not buried within a survey. I know that it was in the survey, the last survey that just went out. What we did find is that the current process within that email was actually incorrect on how to sign out. We were missing steps. So if we could have an email specific to the process, that I think would be very helpful to parents, like I said, not buried within a survey. But other than that, I just want to thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and an additional part of this survey this policy requirements are, and this is a legal requirement, is that annually the district notify parents of these options. And so it will be part of student handbooks moving forward, and it will be present there as well annually.
Great. Thank you.
Yep. Any other public comment? Yes.
I think as I spoke before, my concerns for some of our students and for our teachers who, as a result of the way this was rolled out, have no idea what they're allowed to do with students. They know they're not allowed to put pronouns in surveys. Okay, that they think they've gotten. But what they haven't gotten is, what are they allowed to do? What are the things they're allowed to do in their classrooms? What are the things they're allowed to do? And with teachers having been called on the carpet last year for something that they did because they thought the school board approved it, it's really important that, especially with this policy moving forward, that you make sure that we address that. Teachers really are very, they're scared to do things. So they're scared for their jobs, like they're going to lose their job if they have a conversation. Or something comes up in class and the way they handle it, somebody doesn't like. So it's really important that there be education with teachers about how are the positive ways that we can handle these kinds of questions and issues. We can't just pretend they're not there. Unfortunately, pretending they're not there is what has made suicide among LGBT population so high. And I would hope that the school district would make a point of figuring out how to address the inadvertent consequences of this policy.
Okay, thank you. Any additional public comment?
Fermin Almeida for College Township. I think it just goes back to my concern earlier, where it's what do we do for students who are fearful of outing themselves. If Synergy is something that their parents could approve or disapprove, there's no outlet for them to have their identity known to classmates or faculty members. I think furthermore, like, it's concerning that the voices and concerns of few could lead to such a disconnect in dialogue between students and teachers. So it's like, how do we go about seeing or going about kind of finding a solution for these concerns without shutting down completely that dialogue because of concerns of few or many? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any additional public comment? If you can state your name and where you reside in the district.
Morgan Phillips, Ferguson Township. So one thing I'd just like to start with for my own personal caveat on this is I'm not talking about generalized surveys like school climate surveys or anything like that, but more specifically teacher questionnaires and how the district has been handling that aspect of the process. I've seen some inquisitive kind of looks and faces and almost just as much confusion in this room as I think teachers have had in the last 3 months as a teacher in the district myself. I think one of the things, and I can't remember who brought it up, an important caveat of this policy is not necessarily the policy itself, but ensuring that the board itself is a part of the process on the teacher education of how we are supposed to implement this policy, what this policy does and does not include. The main aspect I would say about that is that we have been notified not to include questions that are listed in Synergy, information that could be listed in Synergy. And with that, obviously, some of those prongs kind of come into place with that private, personal, protected information. However, how we are allowed to help and protect students is a completely different question. Right? And I think one thing that's not really being addressed here is how this is going against the equity policies that we have previously put into place and currently have in place in this board. And I think we're taking a lot of time to, I would say, assume that parents will go in and will advocate on behalf of their children when I think we all know that in this country, and regardless of whether or not we want to admit it, but within this district, that's not always the case, right? So some students feel as though school might be a safer place than home. And I think it's important to allow teachers access to getting to know our students, even if their parents either choose not to implement that information in Synergy, don't know how to, because I've also had parents who have quite literally asked me, not knowing, having not navigated Parent View even once, right? Maybe they've never been really introduced to that. But also I think it's important that we ensure that parents know what is and is not included in this policy so that they are aware what they need to do to ensure that their child is protected. So I think that two aspects of this policy that I think are kind of being swept under the rug on this aspect is the conversation around what are we telling teachers, what is the expectation of teachers with regards to protecting our students and with following this policy, right? What is and is not included, along with parent information and notification of what this policy means and what parents need to do to protect their own children. That's it.
Thank you. Going to make one more call for any public comment. Anyone online? I will just share one quick comment. Sometimes we do come back to the board table and allow board members to make additional comment. Because this has come through the policy committee, which I'm a chair of, multiple times, and for some community members that are tuning in tonight and weren't present for some of those conversations, there was a lot of discussion about the competing needs and the competing requirements that we're faced with as a district. So there are legal requirements that we have to meet in terms of our ability to ask certain kinds of questions, and when we ask those questions, there has to be an opportunity for parents to opt out. And so then there's a logistical issue we've got to overcome as a district in terms of how do we implement that when, you know, in certain situations, there could be a multitude of things happening in a multitude of classrooms and a multitude of buildings. And so I just want to give the comment that those things were weighed very carefully, and a genuine, sincere attempt has been made to try and balance all those needs to come up with something that we hope is going to be functional for everyone. So I don't know if any other board member really wants to add a comment, but I just felt I wanted to say that those other discussions did have occurred along the way to some extent. Yeah, Mr. Leaves?
One thing I would add is that we pass the policies, but then there's also regulation along with the policies, and certainly the regulation regarding these policies is going to have a great deal to do with the professional development for employees, and also the teacher training, or the parent training, or the parent notification process. So I want to be, this is only part of the job. Passing the policy is only part of the job.
Correct. Yeah.
I just want to add to that, Jim, just to put a name on it. We're responsible for the governance of this process. And to some extent, we then turn the task over to the administration to do the implementation. So we are, through the policy, trying to come up with the ideas that we wish to embrace and get expressed through the practices of the administration. But we also need to but we need to rely on the administration to implement these things. And it wouldn't hurt if we see the administrative regulations that are being promulgated, that we can look at and see whether that in fact fits our expectations through the policy. But there is a division of labor here, I think, between the two systems. That's important, just to reinforce for people that we try not to, we can't get into the weeds on every detail like this, unfortunately. So anyway.
And we're fortunate that this policy is coming forward to us tonight with the administrative regulations attached, so we have some of that information for this evening.
That's right.
I also got to say that some of the things cannot occur until the policy is approved.
Right, yeah, right. That's your point.
And that the synergy piece was separate from the policy piece. The synergy piece was already being implemented because that's something that was in synergy demographically that we could open up for students and parents. It had nothing to do with the policy. It just so happened that the policy was, coming out at the same time.
Okay.
Thank you, Curtis.
All right, I think with that, we'll end discussion. And we've already completed public comment, so we're going to have a roll call vote.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney? Yes. Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Dr. Buck?
No.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Okay, that item has passed. Moving on to agenda item 6F is a motion to approve policy 249, bullying, cyberbullying. This is shown in attachment 6F.
So moved.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion on this item? It's an update to our previous bullying and cyberbullying policy, which we're required to do every 3 years. Okay. No comments from the board? Bless you. Is there any public comment on this item? Any public comment online? Okay, seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney? Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Dr. Buck?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
That item is passed. We'll move on to agenda item 6G, a motion to approve policy 255, educational stability for children in foster care. This is shown in attachment 6G.
So moved.
Second.
So that's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion from the board? All right, seeing none, is there any public comment on this item? Appears to be none. We'll have a roll call vote.
Ms. Zidney? Yes. Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Dr. Buck?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Okay, that item is passed. Agenda item 6H is a motion to approve policy 317, conduct disciplinary procedures. This is shown in attachment 6H.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. And this is a policy that refers to employees. Are there any questions or discussion on this item? Appears to be none. Any public comment on this item? All right, seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Anderson.
Yes.
Dr. Bader.
Yes.
Dr. Buck.
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore.
Yes.
Dr. Duffy.
Yes.
Mr. Leos.
Yes.
Ms. Zidney.
That item is passed. Moving on to agenda item 6I is a motion to approve policy 815.9, drones. This is shown in attachment 6I.
So moved.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. I think there's some enthusiasm to put this one to bed.
Down this road we go.
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, this has been through the Policy Development Committee several times. It's bounced back and forth to the full board. I just want to thank Justin Hetrick and Linda for some really, and Jeannie, who works with us on policy development, and some really hard work and real refinement. And I really think this would be one to send to PSBA for them to use as an example, because we certainly put in a lot of work to make this a high-quality policy. Are there any questions now about this policy, the newest version?
Peter?
Peter?
So, I have a question. So let's say that some member of the public goes to Community Field. And as I've talked about before, and they're flying a drone around, and it might even be an X-Man machine, like we talked about last time. But they're not allowed to do that.
Correct.
But am I understanding correctly that they could say, "Dear Mr. Johnson, I would like to be able to use my drone. It looks like this. It is this specification. Am I able to do it between these times?" And they put the times there, and they're not during soccer games or whatever. Would it be possible for them to use it?
So
Private
yes,
use.
so the caveat is prior approval. There is also a clause in there, though, about educational purposes and use. So I think they might have to be convincing that there's an educational reason that they are doing that. But I don't think the policy does not include designating an individual to be in charge of,
Says has been
a
obtained from the
process like that.
superintendent
Oh,
or
it does.
designee. Yeah, it's
Yes.
the
Okay,
last
so
sentence.
sorry.
So
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
So it is
It is possible.
Possible.
Depending on what the circumstances is.
We do have-
depending on the circumstance. But they can't just show up and be like, you know what, I'm going to fly my drone around wherever. But it is possible that members of the public
Yeah.
is there going to be a portal for said application? Is there a way that the public will know about this?
No. No.
No, like they could get, but they could get, but right, they could watch, right. The
Watch
policy
CNET coverage.
exists,
Yeah.
or they could show up and do it and nobody cares, or they could show up and
Yes.
somebody reports them and they get in trouble and
You
then.
could come up with a form or something, yes.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
other question or discussion. Dr. Duffy?
I just want to mention that there's a precedent for this, which is the educational trip form, in terms of families making requests for an exception to the attendance requirements for their children to participate in an educationally relevant activity. So there'd be something, there's a form that we complete for that, so there might be another form for use of drones for educational purposes.
I was actually thinking more on the lines of facility use.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that covers that question.
That's
Any more hypotheticals, Dr. Buck?
No.
All right. You know, I'm joking. We've had a lot of discussion on this item.
I have two of them.
Oh, go ahead,
No,
Mr.
no,
oh,
no, two
oh,
questions,
drones.
two drones.
Yes, two drones.
Okay.
Yeah, not
No
two
questions.
questions.
All right.
We're talking about him.
I appreciate no questions. So at this time, we will open it up to public comment on this item. Is there any public comment online? Seeing none, we are finally going to have a roll call vote on policy 815.9.
Dr. Bader.
Yes.
Dr. Buck.
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore.
Yes.
Dr. Duffy.
Yes.
Mr. Leos.
Yes.
Ms. Zidney. Yes. Dr. Anderson.
Yes.
Look at that.
All right, moving on, we have agenda item 6J is a motion to approve policy 828, fraud. This is shown in attachment 6J.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion from the board? I see none. Do we have any public comment on this item from in-person or online? Also seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Buck?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes. That item is passed. Agenda item 6K is a motion to approve 2023-2024 agreement and 2022-2023 addendum with New Story Schools. This is shown in attachment 6K.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Are there questions or discussions on this item?
Sorry.
Okay. Dr. Buck?
Yeah, is there, so we have rates, but we don't have am I missing something? Do we not have a total estimated amount?
It depends, there's students assigned, so it depends on the number of students that year would be my understanding. So this is an optional assignment outside, so
Yeah.
some of our high needs, autistic or emotional support students would attend there if their needs can't be met within the district. If I'm answering that incorrectly, please correct me from administration.
So do we have like a range?
I don't know, on average, I think it can vary year to year, but I mean, it's probably less than 10, right? Or even less than 5?
Yes, it can be 1, it can be less than 5.
Yeah, it's usually only a couple students. I mean, in the 8 years I've been here, I've only ever heard of,
And they're
a
not
handful.
generally full-year placements either. So it may be more than 5 students, but not necessarily the equivalent of 5 students for the entire year.
I think it's a fair question. I think it'd be reasonable to ask, what has been the expense? Not that it should keep us from voting, but I think the question is relevant. And I think it'd be fair to ask, well, what have been the expenses last year, let's say, just as a reference point, just to have a sense of like, what's the scale of this? But that shouldn't keep us from voting this evening, it seems to me.
Dr. Anderson?
I think I can answer that, which is shocking because I really don't know anything about this topic. But we just approved a renewal agreement with News Story in June. And so I think the purpose of tonight, if I have all the dates correct, is to just make sure that this past summer extended school year was charged under the old rates, and that the extended school year in next summer will be charged under the new rates. And if you look at the memo from June 14th, 2023, I just went into Board Docs and searched News Story, and it was one of the first ones to pop up. It says that in 2022-23, right, because you have to look back, the projected expense is approximately $480,000. Is that still relatively accurate, do you think? We don't have updated information.
The summer would not have been in there.
Okay.
Or may not have been complete, put it that way.
Right.
So but I think that it's probably fairly accurate, yes.
Okay, so that's an estimate of what we did for the last school year. And then that memo also said that the new rates are a 2.6% increase over the rates charged during the previous school year. So if you take 480,000, inflate it by 2.6%, that's probably your best guess.
And the other piece of information I'll add is, like, we have a legal obligation to place these students. We have to place them somewhere. So the expense is not avoidable, that like we have to, if we are unable to provide the adequate services, we have to find a location where those can
Essentially,
occur.
it's a civil right.
Yeah.
Just to be very clear,
I'm-
I am definitely not
Oh.
casting aspersions
I didn't mean
at
it for
this.
you,
I
but
think it is critically
But for
important.
people
I
in the
just
community
wanted.
might not understand why we
Exactly.
place students there, and we have a legal requirement to meet their needs. Yeah, no, I know you know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on this item?
And thank you, Debbie.
Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Crevecore? Yes. Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Dr. Buck?
Yes.
That item is passed. Agenda item 6L is a motion to approve the purchase of a communications platform. This is shown in attachment 6L.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion on this item? Mr. Leos.
I just particularly think the sort of feature that it does translations is really important to our, particularly to our growing, English learners community. So I think this is a very thoughtful purchase, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And from a parent who's had students in extracurriculars, communication between advisors and coaches has been an issue in terms of making sure it's in a safe manner. So this will also cover our needs there, which is a really important consideration. Dr. Anderson?
I just wanted to confirm, and your comment certainly makes it sound like this. I'm assuming this is going to now replace the use of the apps like Band, which is used by the marching band.
Correct.
Remind, which has been used by some sports teams. Sports U, which has been used by some sports teams.
Correct.
And so the one nice thing that Sports U has that Remind didn't, which I think this new one does have, because I tried to look up some stuff about it online, is the incorporation of the calendar. So can we confirm that that is true? That this communication platform will allow, for example, the sports team to have both messaging to their players and their sports calendar sort of integrated into the same platform?
That's correct.
Justin?
Oh, Justin, did you say that's correct?
Yes.
Yes, I heard
Okay,
it. Yes,
that's
which is-
great, because I think that was a really big, helpful addition for the particular sports team that I'm most familiar with, and we like the new app, and we will survive going to a new app, but.
Thank you.
Yeah. Even doing it in the middle of the season, is that what is intended? Yeah, so that might be rough, but.
I had the same conversation with my athlete that he was going to have to make yet another change after his complaints. But I'm glad that we're
This
going to
is
have a
not our
consistent.
choice.
I understand.
And
Thank you.
consistency will be great.
Well, that was kind of my question. When they said that the offset of 15,000, I was wondering what we're removing. And so I guess Debbie answered that. So thank you.
So eventually, this will be a platform that we're using across the district, including our classrooms. So everybody will be using the same thing rather than piecemealing a number of different apps for it. And about the languages, that is really a nice feature where a parent in Spanish could write in Spanish and then it will be translated for the teacher back in English. So
Yeah, that's fantastic.
it does some really nice things, nice features.
Yeah, great. Okay. Yes, Ms. Zidney?
Because of some past experiences with things coming forward, I do go check into these fairly closely, and I was very impressed by what I saw out there on the different, various different websites. I would like to see more in things like this, that there has been a cross-section of people who have worked on, including parents, including novices, grandparents, whoever, have worked on helping make sure that we're getting the right thing. It certainly looked like this is a fantastic piece of software, and it's a great suggestion. I also wanted to mention that I noticed in looking at a couple of different districts that they had a piece up where members of the community could sign up to get certain notices. And I hope that if that's part of the package that we're getting, we'll take advantage of that, because that's been something we've talked
So-
about in the past.
Outside groups, I mean, like PTSO can use it. So it really, when I say the school community will be using this, it's everybody.
This was more like, we have our newsletters that get put out periodically by Nabil and Chris, that community members, there are ways to sign up to get them, but it was a nice, neat thing on their website. It was a very clean-looking thing on websites, so I'm excited about it.
Great. Any other comments or questions? Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Dr. Buck?
Yes.
Dr. Krevakor?
Yes.
Okay, that item is passed. Agenda item 6M is a motion to approve the purchase of a high school oven. This is shown in attachment 6M.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion on this item? Okay, any public comment? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Dr. Buck?
Yes.
Dr. Krevakor?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
That item is passed. Agenda item 6N is a motion to approve the purchase of a school bus. This is shown in attachment 6N.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion on this item? Okay, any public comment? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Ms. Zidney.
Yes.
Dr. Anderson.
Yes.
Dr. Buck. I'm sorry. Dr. Bader.
Yes.
Dr. Buck.
No.
Dr. Crevecore.
Yes.
Dr. Duffy.
Yes.
Mr. Leos.
Yes.
Okay, that item is passed. Agenda item 6O is a motion to approve the purchase of a driver education vehicle, excuse me. This is shown in attachment 6O.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion on this item?
Question?
Dr. Crevecore.
Yeah, I have two questions, actually. One is, how long does these cars usually last? And how often does Comfort Toyota supply us with one? Like, over the past couple of years, how often have they done this?
I believe that the limit is 5 years, but it also that means a 5-year-old vehicle, and we don't always get them brand new. They're generally, I would say, 6 months to less than 2 years of age. So it can vary from about 3 to 4.5 years is how long they keep. The current vehicle that we have, this purchase would take us to 2 vehicles in our fleet. The current vehicle we have is a donation from Joel Confer, and so we're buying this one to add a second, but when they have a vehicle that meets our requirements come into their fleet, they're going to trade out the current one because the current vehicle, donated vehicle, is up for replacement as well.
I see. So my question is, how long have they been doing this? Because I think it's remarkable. I think it's, so just on the top of your head, I mean.
I don't know of another dealer in the area providing us a vehicle, but it doesn't mean that it's been 18 years as long as I've been around, but it's been a fairly long time.
Wow, okay, because that's remarkable, and
Yeah, it's very generous.
it is.
In the memo, it does say for over 10 years, but I'm not sure how much longer than that it is.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Buck?
Yeah, I also appreciate this. I think it's really great. And as we think about our facilities master plan and the vehicles that we're buying, I really hope that we get a hybrid electric, plug-in electric, or an electric vehicle coming in this vein soon. And just encourage whatever discussions we have with Comfort Toyota or whoever else we may be talking to move the electric ball down the street.
Okay. Dr. Anderson?
It's funny that you bring that up, Peter, because I assumed you would. And I somewhat recently bought a new car, and I test drove an electric vehicle, having never driven one before. And so when this came up, having also had relatively new drivers recently, I would have to say, while our families are still more likely to have gas-powered vehicles or hybrid, which drive basically identically to the gas-powered, because I own both, I would discourage us from getting an electric vehicle yet because it is so different to drive. It is incredibly different. You basically don't use your brake nearly as much. As soon as you take your foot off the gas, the car starts to slow down way faster than another car. And so for safety purposes, it's interesting to me. I don't know if we were teaching them how to drive on the electric car, how easy it would be for them to move from one to the other with a brand new driver. So that's just a thought that I had. I would be curious what our driver's ed teachers thought about it, and I would defer to their judgment as the experts on teaching driving. But that was just a thought that I had. I'm all for electric vehicles, but they do drive really differently.
That's a
Thanks.
good point.
I had the exact same thought after driving my friend's Tesla. Yeah.
It's weird how they slow down.
Yeah, well, it's the energy recapture.
Oh, yeah. I know, my car does it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very fast.
Any other discussion? Any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Anderson.
Yes.
Dr. Bader.
Yes.
Dr. Buck.
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore.
Yes.
Dr. Duffy.
Yes.
Mr. Leos.
Yes.
Mrs. Zidney.
Yes.
Okay, that item is passed. Agenda item 6P is a motion to approve the purchase of a waste oil delivery system and containment. This is shown in attachment 6P.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none, any public comment on this item? Seeing none of that, we'll have a roll call.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Dr. Buck?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Okay, that item is passed. Agenda item 6Q is a motion to approve permission to bid for a Grays Wood emergency generator as shown in attachment 6Q.
I moved.
Second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Questions or discussion from the board?
Yeah.
All right,
I am wondering how, in the way administrators, the way physical plant folks are looking for the possibility of battery electric generators, non-gas.
Sorry. So they are a possibility. It's just not a good probability currently with the situation in Grays Woods. We really need to address the immediate need of the building that the backup generator needs to be installed. So as from a long-term standpoint, looking into those, it's a possibility. But in the current conditions at Grays Woods, really the backup generator is the better way to go.
Great. Item 768, to put it into the facilities master plan. Thank
It's
you.
worth a look.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Parmalee. Any other questions? Okay, any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll have a roll call.
Dr. Buck?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes, that item is passed. Final agenda item 6R and action items is a motion to approve a 2023-2024 budget amendment as shown in attachment 6R.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. This has been presented to us at our meeting last week with updated information about our additional funding from the state in terms of gen ed funding.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Zidney?
I wanted to thank you for this. I've resisted the temptation to look at every single item because we don't in general do line item budgets. What I am glad to see in general is the idea that we looked around, that administration looked and found good ways to spend this money. Because those of you who have been around a lot of Octobers, and I know we're not quite there yet, know that this has been something every single year, including one year, that I voted against the final thing because it was like, come on, we have, I don't want to say a windfall, but there are needs and there is money, and we should really be trying to mesh them. So I really appreciate the effort that went into picking out these things and to bring them forward to us.
Thank you, Laurel. Just saying something that I've been thinking. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, any public comment on this item? All right, seeing none, we'll have a roll call.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Leos?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Dr. Buck?
Yes.
Okay, that item is passed. I think we will take a 5-minute recess. A very succinct 5-minute recess. I don't have Jackie's DJ horn, but I will be a hound on you to get back in your chair. Okay, we're adjourned for 5 minutes. We're going to re-adjourn and move on to information reports. And first up, we have a summer programming update. Doctors Bucher and newly doctors Bucher and Klingeman, congratulations, are here to join us to provide an update on elementary and secondary summer programming.
Thank you. We wanted to try to give just a basic overview, and the main reason for this is timing. For the past several summers, we have been using ARP ESSER funding to cover elementary and secondary programming. Given that that funding is now almost all spent, we are starting the conversations about what will be next steps. So, secondary is a part of this memo a little bit in terms of the federal programs piece, but then I wanted to also just include a little bit bigger overview for elementary, since that's really where there'll be conversations that will be upcoming. I just tracked the past couple of years, gave some examples of the number of students, where we've been, how programming has changed, and what requirements we've had to incorporate into the different programming given the stipulations of how the grant is written and the requirements of the grant. Leading up to, at least in terms of elementary, hopefully what we'll be bringing back at some point is once all of the financials have finally cleared from the summer, that we can provide some recommendations for the future. And again, timing of this is important just because of budgeting. So I can take any questions if you have any.
Board members?
Thank you.
Go ahead, and then, I have to remember my question. Go ahead, Dr. Anderson.
So I guess timing is important because of funding, so I guess that's what I'm trying to understand. The memo does not include how much we spent on these things, and so is that what you're saying, that's what's to come? Is you're telling us what we've done in the past,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to think about what we want to do in the future, but obviously one big question we're going to ask you is how much is it going to cost?
Correct. Yeah. So those are the conversations that we would like to continue having internally once we know exactly what has been spent from summer. We're still finalizing some of those things.
That makes sense.
But in terms of timing, I'm more worried about ensuring that Randy and his team have enough time to talk about budgeting, because this has been budgeted for this past several years in ARP ESSER, and right now there is not a specific budget for next fiscal year. So that's why timing is kind of doing two things at once.
Sounds good. Thank you.
So I think that was somewhat to my question, because I recall when I had a student who was eligible for this program years and years ago, and it was primarily funded by Title I funds, and that's the biggest concerning thing I'm seeing in your memo is that Title I funds are no longer eligible to cover, what happened?
So it's not that it's not eligible, it's just the cost of salaries and benefits of our teachers continues to go up, and because of that, the funding is also adjusting. Now, we did get a small and a pretty nice chunk of extra money through Title I for this school year. A lot of that is based on the census poor and what has been changing in our own demographics. So we did have that money, but again, Title I money has to be spent in the areas of which it is, and Easterly Parkway is still the school that generates a substantial amount of more money than the other schools in town.
Okay, so it's not that it's not eligible, it's just, it's not growing at the same rate our costs for salary and benefits are growing.
That is correct.
Okay. Thanks, I was a little perplexed by that.
And this was a problem that we were having this, I was concerned about this 3 years ago, but the ARP ESSER money was specifically used for this, so it hasn't been as big of a problem as it is now moving forward in terms of planning.
One thing that might be helpful, and it is not apples to apples, but I know that the program was very different prior to COVID and prior to ESSER funding, and it was much fewer students, but we were also doing much less things. And so the request for the information isn't necessarily to say one thing should be done or the other, but if we could just have a ballpark sense of how many students were served typically in the past before we expanded. I recall things like 20 to 30 students in the summer, and we used to actually historically have trouble getting families to take advantage of this program, as I recall, that many families declined and weren't interested. And so it's really exciting to see the big jump in participation. But yeah, just the size of the scope of how it's changed over the years might be a little bit helpful.
I'll be glad to
for
include
new
that
board members.
in the past stuff. Yeah, not a problem.
Great.
Can I add something? Well, I'm just thinking that probably after COVID too, because a lot of families were concerned of learning loss. Do you think that's really what promoted it more, so that more families take advantage of it?
I'll be honest, I'm very proud of my summer school team, and we have really built, in my opinion, a very strong, robust program that has always been on a wait list. So by adding in levels of enrichment as a general core part of our programming, I think has really been very successful. And now with some of the other benefits, including us to be able to offer free lunch and breakfast to all students who participate, the collaboration of having ESY at the building as well is really allowing us to try to capitalize on as many different resources as possible. So I think it will probably continue to stay at more of a stable piece, because right now we balance between 6 weeks and 4 weeks, and the 4-week program allowed us for a lot more time to adjust and get ready, but the 6-week program is longer. And what we're seeing is that some kids are like, well, I can't come this week and this week, and the programming that we've built is intentional. It's not just, we're going to do some activities. I mean, we have a scope and sequence and training and a lot of professional development that goes into it. So that's the one struggle that we have. And again, that's why we want to have these conversations and bring them back to you. 4 weeks, 6 weeks, what are the funding needs? Do you want us to look at enrichment as a general part of the community like we've been doing through the grant? Are we just going to be taking a look at intervention with enrichment just for those involved? Those are the questions we have to ask.
But I think you also could kind of guide us to where you think the most needs are, too.
Sure. Yeah, and that's why once I'm able to get all of the funding to take a look at where we've been over the past 3 years, I think that'll be super helpful in guiding what we do next, because there's definitely a need. And you can see specifically under what we've been doing with enrichment related to world language and chess, it was almost not manageable with the amount of interest and need that we have.
Yeah, I will echo that. It's changed so much dramatically in the last 3 years, and it's been a phenomenal, growth that you and your team have done. Dr. Anderson?
I just wanted to ask a couple of questions about the secondary summer school data, because it's a lot less information. And so, like, what year is that from? I'm assuming just this past summer. And what grades? Like, is it middle school and high school? Is it just high school?
It's high school.
Okay. And what is the main purpose of summer school? Like, is it just for grade replacement? How do you qualify for summer school, right?
Yeah, so if you get an F or a D, it's enrichment to replace, not required if it's a D, required if it's an F. Come in for the summer, the courses, 66 courses were offered.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Ms. Zini?
I just wanted to say thank you for this, because it's been something I've wondered about the entire time I've been on the school board. And I remember a conversation very early on with an administrator who then departed from Texas, and we were talking about starting to do something, look at summer, because I knew of districts that really got lots of kids in, and so you had a real mix of children. And I don't know that we can do that. The world has changed a lot, but I'm just delighted to see something brought forward about what we offer, because I think it's one of those things that if your child doesn't qualify, you don't know about it. And I also remember when we had trouble getting kids to take it, and I think the fact that we have those wait lists is really important for those kids. I think we talked earlier about stigma. There was stigma sometimes to it, and so this is really good, and it's nice to see the report. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the intentional addition of enrichment changes the perception of the program.
Yeah.
So
Agreed,
that's
yeah.
something I think we'll have to weigh really carefully about on the financial piece, because it does I think it makes a difference of both the students' engagement and also just the perception for
parents.
families. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. It was really helpful to see all that information. Great. So up next in information, we have 2023-2024 new textbooks with Chris Merritt and an IB Physics textbook.
Good evening. Yes. Tonight, I would like to share the memo and the request to purchase a new IB Physics textbook. About every 5 years, IB revises its courses, and when they do that, there are times where we might need to buy a new resource that matches the new course sequence and the new assessment that they're requiring. So this is one of those cases where we have students taking IB Physics, and the request is for about $1,100. And this book is used in both the IB Year 1 and Year 2 physics courses.
Okay. Questions from the board?
So as per our usual, it'll be on display for 30 days if anyone wants to look at it, and then we'll bring it for approval.
So I had one quick question.
Sure.
And maybe I didn't get through the memo properly, but I was confused because I thought it said you're asking for the edition 3, but it's available as high as an edition 6. So why are we buying a 3-year-old textbook if there's a newer one?
Good question. So I have Dr. Jen Schreiber and Brett Wilson on the line because they're the ones who led the textbook selection for this.
Okay, thanks.
Jen, are you online?
I am. To my knowledge, that was the newest version available. So if there's a newer version, the one that was released in 2023 would be the version that we're looking for.
Is it in the memo? All right, maybe I misread it. Hold on, let me.
It says 3rd edition and it says 2023.
2023.
Wait, but then.
Is there a difference between higher level physics and physics in the IB program? Could that be?
It totally could be my error.
I don't think so. They did look at a 6th edition of Cambridge.
Oh, maybe that's where I construed.
That was one of the other books they looked at.
Okay.
But they selected this one instead.
So that was, I
Yep.
crisscrossed them.
Your memory
I
went.
am very apologizing for the confusion. I knew I read 6th edition somewhere, and I
Yep.
was like, wait, I'm not sure how that all jives together. Okay. It's hard to run a meeting and remember my questions sometimes. Yeah, it was 6, yeah.
So now-
Okay, so sorry about that, thanks.
No problem.
We figured it out.
Now that you mentioned the other textbook, do they have a reason why that they selected one over the other? Was it cost? Was it one that aligned better? Or, was that a particular reason why that was done?
Jen, would you like to? It's typically a preference of the committee that they look at the books and think which one is laid out better. Sometimes it's cost. But if there's another book that's equivalent that costs a lot less, most likely they go with the one that costs less. But Jen, do you have knowledge about that?
We have very few resources to choose from for IB, and this was the teacher's preference and the one that he felt aligned best with the new curriculum.
Okay.
Great. All right, thanks for joining us this late, Jen. Oh, wait, sorry.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask about, well, 2 things. I know that we have, regarding what you just asked about why this was picked, I know that sometimes when we've seen the text things, there's actually been a nice sheet that shared some of that information. That's helpful to see. But my bigger question with this one is, I just double checked, I was recalling correctly that the IB Physics is one of those that we've run with very few students and we co-seat them.
Yes.
Is this, if the decision were to be made not to offer that course, is this a textbook that could be used for other courses as well?
Possibly. It could also be resold as a used book.
Okay.
So, yeah. We're not ordering that many of them, so
Yeah,
it's not
well,
like we would have
that's
enough
right.
for a class of 25.
Yeah.
Unless we ordered more of them. So,
Yeah, I figured that's why we were getting
yeah.
that number.
It's
but
specifically
I was
for this
concerned
class,
about,
yeah.
I was just concerned about it because it has been on the list.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, sorry.
No, go ahead. It's fine.
So there's like a website and online tools and videos. So would somebody in theory that would review this physics textbook have access to those, or?
If we were able to get a link for the
Yeah.
online,
Okay.
typically we have the physical book available for review, not the online part.
Yeah, because a lot of times in like physics or calculus, that makes a big difference, though, whether you can see stuff in action, 3D, so, okay, thank you. And it'll be on evaluation in this building, in your office?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, I had one other question. When I was looking at the bottom about the yes, no, and the equity part, and they said that they don't do any equity stuff in physics. And I think some of the things of the equity questions were just like pictures of different representation in books. And their reasons for not doing it is because they want to keep science. And I thought that was, I was not happy with that response because it's just kind of being inclusive with just about everybody.
Yeah.
So I didn't know why that textbook per se just did not want to do anything in that respect. So that was my concern about why this textbook was chosen. If there were other compatible ones that had representation and was more inclusive.
Yeah, again, I didn't lead the committee. I really can't speak to that point. Jen, do you have any thoughts about that?
Again, I would just say our choices are very limited, and I think for this particular subject, the focus in the textbook, or there just isn't a lot of that sort of representation in the textbook.
So not a lot of people pictures, maybe we're saying.
No, but they went out of their way when
Yeah.
you looked at the bottom to say, no, we don't want to do that in physics. We want to just concentrate on the science. But it wasn't advocating. It was just showing different pictures with different representation. And
Well-
that bothered me that the textbook went out of its way saying, no, they don't want to do that. And, you know.
It does say that it includes illustrations and depictions from people from diverse backgrounds, and they clicked yes.
Yeah.
Our textbook committee selectors picked yes. Such illustrations are throughout, is what they wrote. At the end, what it says is that it's a book strictly on technical principles, but it doesn't make statements about other topics related to race, gender, or stereotypes.
Okay. So basically, the ones that we reviewed it, and we felt that it was appropriate.
Correct. They
even
did
though-
feel like it had representation in it.
Okay. But they just chose not
Right.
to.
It's not a political book, is what
Right,
they're
and it's
stating.
a physics book. I
It's-
mean,
yeah, yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
just the thing about being inclusive. Okay.
Yep. Thanks.
There it is.
Yeah.
So, just quickly, I want to revisit the summer school. We did have 2 middle school students that went to summer school to make up courses. So.
Thanks for the clarification. All right. So if we're done with textbooks, we'll move on to item C, power purchase agreement update from Mr. Brown. It's going to kick it off.
Okay, thank you. There was a memo in your materials, but I assume that you've already read that. What I'd like to jump to is the information that we have received since that memo was written. And you may think, really, just 3 days ago when you wrote that? Yes, this has been a very fast-moving and slow-moving project. Right, Peter?
Yeah.
So just some talking points to bring some basis of understanding for you. In 2022, December of 2022, a consulting contract in the amount of $69,725 was agreed upon by the school district on behalf of the entire working group, which was representing 15 organizations, including the school district. At that time, it was estimated that it would, but before the RFP, we were estimating that the contract would cost $75,000. Almost all of that contract has been paid. All of it has been, it's being fulfilled, and it's all been earned, more than earned at this point in time. In February of '23, legal service cost estimates were for $35,000 for a first round, which of that, $32,759 were paid, and a second round of $45,000, which we've paid actually $50,000 worth. In August of '23, we notified the working group, we meaning Peter and I and Gretchen, notified the other working group members that there would be additional legal services necessary. That amount was not known at that time. Last week, you were notified, and you authorized an additional $30,000 worth of legal services. That was September the 11th. September the 14th, I was notified that that $30,000 was expended in full. There was a lot of work on those contracts done last week, it's my understanding. They were delivered to Prospect 14, which is the developer, and we were notified last week also in the push to get this process moving, our consultant notified Prospect that, we are very serious about this and we want to have documentation and documents by the end of the month. Prospect then notified this district that upon notice to proceed construction, they would refund up to $25,000 worth of legal fees. They also stated that on notice of commercial operation date, they would refund up to an additional $25,000. So that could mean a total of $50,000 in legal fees could be repaid to the members of the working group. We have to go through with the project to get that $50,000. So it goes hand in hand, but it is an effort. Today, the district was notified that the additional legal work to complete comments from Prospect 14 ranges from an estimated cost of $20,000 to $40,000. The attorney is also willing to work at risk, which means that he would like to move forward with the work. However, he knows that unless he is notified that he is going to be paid for his work, he may not be paid. SCASD has asked the attorney to also provide a firm dollar amount in the form of a not to exceed to get all of this legal services completed and get us to the end game. That amount is still being determined. Next Wednesday, September 27th, is the next working group meeting where the 13 remaining organizations are expected to be meeting. The meeting is going to be our first in-person meeting since prior to March of 2020. It will be in this room. The public is welcome to attend. There will be a hybrid option. Contact my office if you need to or wish to participate virtually. That meeting will provide a status update, and we're looking to gain commitments from the various member organizations on whether they're interested to continue. And that rationale is because of the extra legal costs, because of the comments that we're receiving, and the concerns that have been voiced thus far. Is there any questions to that point?
Are you going to put all of that in writing? Because my notes are terrible, and you spoke really fast.
I take listens from Gene Knaus and Jonathan Klingeman.
And I speak pretty quickly myself.
Yes, I will share that in writing.
That would be
I will
really
ensure that
welcome.
all of that is in the minutes to the.
Yes, I think it's important
The
for
meeting
us
minutes.
to have all of that written down, because that answers some of the questions that I have, which is how much have we already spent?
Well, and remember, those amounts are
I
in
know.
total.
Yes, and I would encourage us to put that in.
The district's amounts too, I can give you
I
those.
think it's important because the public hears the full amounts, and they hear us authorize these full amounts, and we're only going to pay about
40-ish%
40-ish% of that, which is less than half. And so, when everyone's having sticker shock, we can still have sticker shock, but for a smaller amount.
Correct.
And so that's important. So I think having all of this written down in memo or minute form is important for all of us to make sure we're all on the same page and that we understand what's actually happened and how we're moving forward. So I would really welcome having it in writing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I shared all those same questions. I was going to also ask just to, that we continually remind the public that we are only responsible for a portion of that dollar figure. Other questions or comments?
Yeah, really quickly, I think that what happened in the last 3 days is really encouraging, in my opinion. It shows real seriousness about the project from the developer, that the developer wants the project to get across the finish line, basically in the manner that that we've been talking about it at the price that we've been talking about it, which is a really good price per kilowatt hour with the fixed rate on it. So we're in a much better place, I think, than we were last week. And as usual, I want to take the moment to thank Randy. You know, Randy is the point for this whole thing. And so when the stress comes, it goes to Randy, and then, you know, I might get a phone call, or Greg might get a phone call, or, you know, whoever.
A lot of phone calls.
You know, a lot of phone calls. But, you know, it's, you know, I think it really speaks to Randy's professionalism and his organizational ability and openness to learning and really kind of mastering a subject that he never had any intention of learning about, but when he became a finance director for the State College Area School District. You know, I really appreciate Randy. I know that we spend a lot of time being like, and Randy did great stuff. It's also true. So, thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Peter. I did want to say that if there are no other questions, I did want to say, what are our next steps? What are your next steps? Okay. But I threw, as it was stated, I threw a lot at you. So, but what are our next steps? We do expect comments from the developer, Prospect 14, in the next several days. That will help the attorney inform his cost estimate moving forward. And so we do expect that information. I want to provide that to you, the board. We are the lead organization, and so I'm going to request that, given that I expect that additional information, and I expect then the attorney to turn around an updated cost estimate, I'm going to put you on notice that I'm asking that we have another board meeting between now and Wednesday the 27th. And the reason is, you as the lead organization, Peter, Gretchen, and I are going to be asked, what's the school board thinking as far as moving forward, and what are your thoughts? And so I think that we should be ready in order to continue to move this forward.
And so chances are,
I'm
the
thinking
closer,
next Monday.
the closer to the 27th, the more likely you are to have actual information to share, so.
So I'm thinking next Monday, and it could, and hopefully it will be, as Peter and I talked about, a 20-minute meeting, and we can make it hybrid. So as we get through this week, when we get to Wednesday, I think Thursday would be our cutoff day for having that meeting scheduled. So I'll work with Lynn. We'll make sure that that's all taken care of. So does that make sense as well?
You bet.
Yeah.
The only thing I was just asking for feedback. I'm looking forward to participating, or observing, I should say, the meeting of the municipalities in terms of their response to all this, their take on the progress that we're making. Their share is going to be smaller, but they still have a share. So I'll be interested to hear what they have to say.
Their total budgets are smaller too.
Right, that's true. And we have a, but in terms of seeing the movement, the larger movement of the project, I'm curious as to hear their take on what's going on.
Right. And I will tell you that part of, I think, the concern that Peter and I are hearing at different levels, maybe even Gretchen, I haven't spoken to Gretchen about this in a while, is that you have the advantage that I am the lead, and you have two board members on the group, and the three of us all meet weekly, or almost weekly, on this subject matter as well. And so some of those, there can be a void of information, and it's not intentional, but it just, there's different moving pieces. So.
There may be some catching up that has to happen in terms
Correct.
of people's information.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
I'm thinking there's going to be some phone calls in the next week for me.
Right. So just to give you an understand, real quick, the total cost of what I expect at this point would be $224,000 for the contract for the legal and the consultant, and our portion is going to be right around $99,000 of that. So just giving you that basis of understanding in round numbers. But I'll put all of the details, make sure that Lynn adds those to your minutes, and I can also, as I'm giving them to her, I can send out an email to the entire board.
And I think just as a point of reference, that is not that much more, that's pretty close to a district electricity bill for a month.
So thank you, and stay tuned for a meeting.
Dr. Anderson has a question or a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Just as a follow-up, I really appreciate the level of detail that you had to give us tonight, and I look forward to seeing that in writing. In addition, the memo that was attached to this agenda had more detail than I feel like we've seen in the past, unless I missed it, about open items that are left to figure out, right? So since we have a nice list of what still is left to figure out, can we also get a similar list of what we've actually figured out? That is, what have we spent all this money on? What is it that the legal fees have actually buttoned down for us? What do you see what I'm asking? Like, I know we're working towards a contract, but what questions have they identified? Like, I don't want to spend more money to get them to make that list, but I assume we know what they've done for us, and that would be helpful as well.
So let me just answer that indirectly.
Sure.
What I've been told over and over again by the consultant and the legal team is that the legal team received a contract from the vendor. And the contract from the vendor was probably a perfect example of why Scott Eddard typically likes to write a contract from scratch instead of receiving something from a vendor. Because it was more tailored to the vendor and not applicable to potentially 15 different public organizations. And so there needed to be a lot of rewrite, but I'm very confident that the consultant can provide some language and description of that.
Thank you. I mean, it doesn't have to be super long. Like,
No.
what was in the memo was super helpful, so I understood what's still left to be done.
I think that we can
So
work on
similar,
something like that.
what have we buttoned down? That'd be great.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so my understanding from chatting with Randy about this a little earlier was just, there's no previous examples to follow in terms of creating some of this contract, that, the circumstances are a little different, being that we're all they're public entities, and that creates some miscommunication. So I agree, that would be great to list both sides of the equation, what we have and what we haven't done, so.
Thank
Anything
you.
else? Okay, we'll move on to board reports. This is an opportunity for board members to provide update from their committee initiatives. So Dan, from the Central IU, anything to share?
I can offer the highlights of the last IU board meeting. There were five or six different highlights. I think they're important to mention. One was the approval of the site plan for the property in Phillipsburg that has been considered a location for a headquarters for the intermediate unit. There also was approval of an IU emergency operations plan, and the IU health and safety plan was updated. And there were two items related to the executive director. We have an early bird contract that we approved with our executive director, Dr. Francine Endler, that would basically begin its term in July 1, 2024, and that's a 4-year contract, actually a 5-year contract, a 4-year contract. And we also approved goals for the coming year for Dr. Endler. There are 3 goals that we reviewed and we approved. So those are the highlights of that meeting.
Great, thanks very much. Next up, we have the SCASD Education Foundation Liaison, which is me. And the main things we discussed at that meeting, Jean Canals actually joined us and shared a lot of the mental health information she shared with the board just a couple weeks ago, and some of the plans for the upcoming year. And that was because the Ed Foundation has a set aside fund for the My Mental Health Matters group, and so there was a discussion about the amount of funding that they'd be contributing to support the efforts of the district in regards to that. So a decision was made on that. There was some further discussion and refinement of their proposed budget for 23-24, and some decisions made about experimenting a little more with who they send their quarterly magazines to, and they're going to try to invest some funds in sending that to some additional people in hopes to grow their donor base. So just some changes in what they're addressing.
That's the physical magazine?
Yeah, the
one that
physical, the mailer, yeah, because that mailer doesn't go to their entire database right now, so they're going to try out, expanding that a little bit and see how that helps their recognition and their presence in the community grow. Yeah, that's about it.
And the Student Opportunity Grant.
Oh, yes, that was the other thing. Yes, so they launched the Student Opportunity Grant, which is the program where teachers apply for small grants for different various projects. And I think that deadline's coming up maybe next week.
Next Friday.
Next Friday, yes. So, and then those will all get discussed by the Foundation Board and decisions made about the awards. Yeah, thanks, Randy. I forgot that one. Next, we have Carlene, CTC.
The CTC, Ben was here last week, so he gave us an update of everything, and we're going to have a virtual meeting on September 21st coming up, and in-person meeting in October.
Okay, great. Citizens Advisory Committee reports, athletics, Carlene?
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, we met in August 23rd with Chris, and when he started, it was virtual also, and the first thing he said is that the membership for the CAC members for athletics, it's diminishing, and we need more members. And so he says that if anyone we want diverse members, we want parents, anyone that would like to join, but if they do, they would have to send a letter of intent to Len, and then we would get it. So that's one of the things. He gave us a recap of the challenges of some of the things that happened in the summer, and so we're moving on with that, and we hope that things that happen, the students could grow and understand. We talked about coaching search because that's always a challenge. We still need coaches, and what's so hard is that we need the right coaches for the students. We can't just have any, so that's what makes it a special challenge, getting coaches. When we met, the Memorial Fields wasn't finished yet because of Art Fest. It was delayed, but it was going to be finished in a week, so it's done. The North Field, the fence was moved. We talked about that, and the flagpole is up, and that's good to go. The girls' 9th grade volleyball, they have coaches, so that's also good to go. They're looking for more opportunities for these girls. The fall ticket sales are strong, so we're really happy about that. And one final thing is that the football games are going to be televised. And it hasn't been in the past, but what's great about it is that the broadcasting students, they're going to be involved in that, so they'll be learning. So I thought that was pretty
Great. So
interesting.
they're partnering with CNET?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Seven Mountains Radio.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Okay, that's it.
Thanks. Facilities would be Gretchen and Peter. Have you guys met?
We do not have an update.
Okay. Finance, Deb? CAC? Laurel?
I went and Jim went. You want to?
Yeah, I can give a report. Well, we talked about the budget addendum.
We did.
Randy reviewed a lot of the items, got some great feedback on those. Randy also highlighted the transportation problem that we, particularly getting bus drivers, and if there was some incentives that we could do there. And then we talked about the Memorial Field renovations, and I was at the game on Friday night, and it's beautiful. And the bands were great. Altoona brought their band, and everything was great. So, and so that's pretty much it. We're doing some development too, and looking at we paid for most of the Memorial Field renovations with a single large gift. So that's what Randy reported too.
Yes. Okay. School health and safety is Dan and I, we haven't met yet, so. And technology is Jackie, who's not joining us today. I don't know that they've met. So that concludes board reports. Future meetings, looking ahead, we have tomorrow, September 19th, is Policy Development Committee. That'll be here at Panorama Village in the boardroom at 1:30 p.m. October 2nd is Committee of the Whole and a regular board meeting here again at Panorama in the boardroom at 7 p.m. October 16th is another regular board meeting at 7 p.m., Panorama Village, here in the boardroom. And finally, October 17th, we will also have another Policy Development Committee meeting that at 1:30 here in the boardroom at Panorama. Okay. And now I'd like to call for a motion for the meeting to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.